exciting.
Okay.
Hey.
Okay, they've been admitted.
Terrific. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. We're delighted to welcome you to A View from Abroad. My name's Janet Rossbach, and I'm the Director of Alumni Relations and Volunteer Engagement. We're thrilled that you're here with us today and look forward to some more alumni logging in over the next few minutes. A few housekeeping details. We invite our guests to keep themselves on mute and turn off video just so that we can focus on our panelists. If you have any questions that you would like to ask the panelists, please type it into the chat box. You can see the little chat bubble at the bottom of your screen. Towards the last 15 or so minutes, I will gather those questions and share them with the panel. The background of this conversation began when my colleague Lauren Braun, who is also on the session with us, and I were talking about COVID-19 and what the impact was in New York City and in our lives. And we started just wondering aloud, I wonder what it's like for our alumni who live abroad. And that just birthed the idea, why don't we ask them? And so Lauren and I have worked together to invite some wonderful alumni from Israel for this pilot conversation. We're looking forward to having similar conversations with alumni in the UK and China, eventually Brazil, Korea, and maybe other places because as I read in an article just the other day, we're still in wave 1 of this global pandemic. I'm especially delighted to introduce Eliya Vaknin, who is a wonderful alumna. She will do a brief introduction and moderate our conversation. And again, if you have any questions, please type them into the chat. So Eliya, the floor is yours, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Eliya, you are on mute.
Oh, can you hear me?
Now we can hear you.
Okay, beautiful.
Perfect.
So thank you, Janet. I'm very excited to be here. So I appreciate having this opportunity to connect with all of you guys. And I'm actually super curious to know where you're from. So if you can pop in the chat where you're located, that would be quite interesting. And of course, to have this opportunity to connect with our fabulous speakers, Uri, Alex, and Erez. So first and foremost, I just want to kind of touch a point with you of what we will be discussed today. Or maybe I should present myself first. I think that's better. So I'm eliya. I currently live in Tel Aviv, and I work as a cyber consultant. I'm part of I'm a trustee on the Baruch, the BCF board, and I really enjoy having good time with people around me. And I'm happy to connect with you because it's been a while. So the topics that we will discuss today will be very interesting. We'll first touch point on our personal experiences, right? How was it for our panelists to go through COVID-19 and still going through the business impact from in their field, and later to discuss some economic and cultural trends that we're seeing in our society. So as Janet mentioned, you have 15 minutes to have like a Q&A session. So please stay tuned, pop in your questions, and let's begin. Let's begin with an introduction of our panelists. Uri, let's begin with you. Would you be able to introduce yourself?
Sure. So, hi everyone. My name is Yorai Gabriel. I always say that the easiest way to pronounce Yorai is your eye. So, basically, I consider myself to be some sort of a serial disruptor. I've been a co-founder of several startups. I'm currently head of products at Trustor, which is a construction tech startup, and we're developing real-time sensor-based command and control solutions for project managers. I also do some innovation and product management coaching. So I'm working with a lot of innovation managers and transformation managers in multinational startups and also government, and kind of gives me a broad perspective of how challenging transformations and innovations are. And in order to share all this knowledge, I do a lot of teaching also about innovation and product management. And I'm mentoring at the global Google Launchpad Accelerators program.
Thank you, Rai. Alex?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I wanted to say that I'm really honored to be part of this panel. I think, to be on the same panel with Yorai and Erez, Eliya, it's fabulous. I don't know what I've done right, but I guess I've done something right to be on this panel. So thank you for that. I'm Alex. I'm currently working as a product specialist for WeWork. So I'm a WeWork employee. What we do in Israel, in Tel Aviv, is that we providing our members, our customers with sophisticated solutions for paying their bills from the moment they received a notice that they need to pay, to the ways they can pay it, and then the invoice, and then all the experience in between. I'm heading the global operations of this in terms of support, all the way from Japan and Australia to San Francisco and Latin America. So very interesting, very challenging, long hours, but very exciting, very interesting, very dynamic. Before that, I used to work for Morgan Stanley, doing analyst roles. And then in Baruch, of course, studied business management and finance.
Okay, thank you, Alex. I think you forgot to mention your our fabulous ambassador, Baruch ambassador in Israel.
Yeah.
And Erez?
Yeah. Well, we need to say maybe good morning. I see from the list here, so good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from everyone around the globe. Here, mostly in the United States, but I see here some from Israel and some from Europe. So it's very nice to see so many people from around the globe. My name is Erez Brit. I'm the CEO and founder of Tandem Capital. We're an investment house based in Israel. We founded the company almost 20 years ago, which almost the same time I graduated from Baruch College, which was a doing asset management, which what we started 20 years ago. But today we also represent very big entities here in Israel, some European, from United States, and even from Japan, banks that wants to do business here in Israel. And I'm very connect now to New York because almost 3 years ago, we opened a very successful fund in New York called Golden Bridge, when we do US real estate loans. That's it. Go ahead, Eliya.
Thank you, thank you. So amazing, really. Very, like Alex said, I'm very honored to be here today. So let's talk about our personal experiences during COVID. I know that all of us heard about what's going on in China, and we couldn't really imagine like it would come here, what would be the impact. So I wonder, what was your personal experience going through COVID? How did you encounter it for the first time? Erez, would you like to begin?
Sure. As I said, many of, or a lot of my time I spend now in New York. The last time I was in New York was end of February, beginning of March. And in Israel, it was already all of the press, and there were a lot of interviews, and all the media, and the Prime Minister was, speaking every evening. And in New York, nothing. When I spoke with my friends here in Israel and with my employee, they said, "What? No one's talking about it in New York." They thought that maybe, I'm bluffing or something like that. But I said, no, all the restaurants are fully open, the clubs, no one even, speak about it in the meetings. And only really in the last weekend when I was there, that was really the beginning of March. Then I realized that something is going to change, which I just got up early in the morning. I remember it was Sunday morning, and I called my travel agent. I said, "Today I'm leaving New York. Find me a flight back." And because of the hours of the difference, I left Sunday afternoon. I go to Israel Monday afternoon, and 2-3 hours later, the Prime Minister said, "Okay, everyone that's coming to Israel from this minute, he needs to be in quarantine for 2 weeks." So I survived the quarantine.
Good timing to be back.
But, everything is history.
Yes, absolutely. Alex, what was your personal experience during COVID?
Actually, surprisingly, it was very similar to Erez, but not in the US. We actually flew to a family vacation, a very anticipated family vacation in Seychelles. We waited for a long time for this. We flew on my wife's birthday, which was February 5th. And then we've encountered this, not in Israel, but actually in Seychelles when we arrived there, and we've seen that many people with masks, and it kind of felt weird and just uncomfortable. But then in the island, it was perfectly fine. But then when we came back, people in Israel started talking about this already. And we, as I said, there was a lot of stuff going on the news about the people getting sick all over the world and the spread of it. And we just got back to Israel, and then everything started. And obviously in Israel, like in probably many other places, from 0 to 100 in a few days. And then we found ourselves stuck at home, locked at home, right? With kids, with family, with everything. So it was very chaotic. But at least in my mind, I had that, okay, we've done our vacation. I satisfied my wife and my
You consumed
exactly.
it.
And, so at least the vacation is fine. Now we can continue to do the lockdown at home, and it was very challenging. But you know what? At least we got that part right.
Hey, I would be fine going to Seychelles and then being stuck at home.
Any day.
Thank you, Alex. What about you, Uri? How was your personal experience?
So I think we're starting to see a pattern here, because everyone's experience starts somewhere around an airport. So my experience starts exactly the same way. I was in Poland in mid-February for the Google Launchpad in Warsaw. And on the way back, it was just, people just starting talking about it. And then on the way back, I found myself in an airport, and next to a flight from Singapore. And then I'm thinking to myself, maybe it's getting serious, and you start imagining all like this 12 monkey, and like if you've seen the movie, like scenes from the 12 monkeys, and you fly back home, and things are still normal. But the thing is that everything changed and became extremely serious very, very quickly. So a week later, they announced that everyone who's coming back is, going into a quarantine. Okay, so, and then a couple weeks later, I think it was the beginning of the lockdown. And it kind of hits you very, very quickly, and it's like, wait a second, just a couple of weeks ago, I was, doing my regular stuff, in different places, and then all of a sudden, you're at home, and you can't go out, and the streets are empty, and it's completely weird, and I was thinking, so how quickly things get serious.
Right. Right, I remember that as well. I know that I actually already locked down myself because my roommate came back from abroad and had to be in quarantine. So it kind of impacted everyone. So going to our, the second topic of a business impact perspective, what was the business impact that you experienced in your field? Erez, I know that we had some chit chat about, how you experienced that from business perspective as a CEO of an investment firm. I'm sure it brings a lot of challenges. What was the business impact from your perspective? And I'm curious also to hear, how did you deal with this?
I'm a big believer of getting the best from every crisis, or taking crisis. In many you will take advisors for big organizations, for small organization, and they will tell you, if you want to get better, put like a demi crisis, and then think, put people, the management company, put them in a room and think of a demi crisis, and then think, what you can do for the company, and then eventually the company can be, maybe in a bad place, or think of how to make more, the company more efficient. So I'm saying, we don't need this demi crisis in the last few months. All over the world, every company had a crisis in this way or another, and it doesn't matter, in which sector you are, and not even not only in companies, even inside your house. Eventually, you need to be with your wife and with your children so many hours, so many days, close in one house, and things can change. So from the beginning of this crisis, I said to my employee, look, we need to, what can we do different? What can we do different from other companies in order that when this crisis will finish, and for sure, 3 months ago, everybody knew that it's gonna finish one day, maybe 1 month, maybe 2 months, maybe 6 months, but it's gonna finish one day. And then where do you want to be? And one of the things we did was to be in a very tight connection with all our investors. It doesn't matter if you did good or bad, or some of the managers said, oh, look, all the markets are falling. Maybe this is not the time to speak with the investors, and maybe this is the time. This is the time to hear. Because one of the things that we are investment managers, but a lot of the time we are not managers. We are also psychology. Okay, you need to hear what the clients need to say, what he's got to say. Is he in panic? Maybe economically, it's not good for him to sell. Financially, it's not good to sell, when the markets are going down. But if the client doesn't sleep good at night, it doesn't help that you will tell him, no, don't sell. But, eventually, the panic is more strong than anything. So you need to hear, if he's really in panic or not. And then not only, to say what, don't sell, because one, a good advice to one is not the same advice to another one.
Right.
So of course I can talk more and more what we did, but maybe we can come back later. But one of the things again that we did were Zoom a lot of one-on-one talks with our clients, and also we did Zoom like we do now. We did a few. We schedule a few Zooms to many of the clients, and we invite them to participate. And we give a full presentation of what happened and how we see how we're going to see the next steps and what we're going to do. And we got many calls after, said, look, it was very good because now we are more calm. We see that you are maybe we are in a good hands. That maybe no one knows what's going to be, but we see that you are in control. And the most important thing is transparency.
I think it's a great takeaway for everyone to kind of as a strategy to how to manage, your business relationships. The interesting insight. Thank you, Erez. Alex, as a product specialist at WeWork, how did you experience the business impact on the co-working industry? That's actually quite, I think, interesting.
Yeah, so it's actually very interesting. And let me just, a few steps back, just tell you that since we work with colleagues all over the world, we've started experiencing this while we discussed this, or while we had talks with our colleagues in APAC and especially in China. I remember around mid to end of January, they just disappeared for 2 weeks and we couldn't get a hold of them. Apparently that was the time where they couldn't come to the office anymore. They started the lockdown until they got basically the going of working from home and setting up all their equipment and all their computers from home. And then at some point, just before I went to my vacation, I remember that when we spoke with them and we were still working in the office, I remember they told us, wow, how is it possible that you guys are still sitting in the office and in the same room? I mean, they pointed and said, you guys sit in the same room. And they were already working from home. And it's like, then it started feeling like, okay, it will get to us, but we obviously didn't know what the scale of that would be. And then once it hit us, that hit us hard. Like I said, it went very, very fast, right? So the moment it got to Israel, lockdown, the prime minister on TV every day, and then everybody's at home, no schools, no kindergartens. Then you're also trying to adapt and then see how you can work in this kind of new conditions. And then a lot of countries started doing the lockdowns, and people couldn't come to the offices. So the impact on the company was huge. The impact on me was not as big because we still had to be able to provide people with options to pay. People still needed to pay. And although a lot of payments were deferred to a later date, but the ones that needed the offices, like essential workers, they needed to pay for the offices. So it was important for us to give them the best experience that we could have done in order to pay this, even with discounts or whatever it is. But once they've decided that they need to use the office and use our spaces, then we needed to give them a way to pay, and that was my job to do. Obviously from home, much more difficult with kids running around and jumping on you. But that's part of the deal, right? I mean, we got that done, and I'm just happy that we're already over this. And fingers crossed, we won't get to the second wave that people are talking about. But fingers crossed for that.
Thanks.
We really hope so. Alex, it's funny that you mentioned, with the kids at home. And I think I said earlier that things got really serious very, very quickly, but they also got really, really amusing in some way. If you remember a couple of years ago, there was this TV interview with this guy who's kind of giving like an expert opinion, and then his kids walk into the room. It was like all over. And then during the lockdown, everyone became like that. So everyone who was at home had these incidents, like you're doing a conference call and your kids coming and they give you cookies or they ask you to fix the Lego toys. And so that was some kind of side of the I'd say the funny or the amusing side of it, because it was so accepted. It was so, Natural, exactly. And it kind of, I had the feeling during the lockdown that in a way kind of life got to their normal size, got back to their normal size. So you spend a lot of time.
I totally agree with you, Yorai. I totally agree with you.
So things became a little bit more familiar. You spend a lot more time with your loved ones. You're actually kind of going, kind of getting in and instead of being like outside the whole time. And I think it kind of affected people in a very interesting way. I mean, I know it was a terrible time for a lot of people, but still, I think that even in this time, a lot of people kind of found a lot of strength again. With themselves.
Mm-hmm. I would totally strengthen that, even though it's not very much related to the business impact, which will go back right away. But I would say that it allows everyone to come down from this busy lifestyle that we keep having. And, just because of that, and just because you're coming from such an interesting industry, I wonder what was the business impact in the construction tech, which is kind of an interesting animal from your industry. What was the business impact? But I would love to get back to the point which you mentioned later.
So we could talk about it later, but I think it had, the fact that people kind of narrowed their lives. It had some business impact, but I'll talk about construction also because there were a lot of interesting things that happened there, and I think they kind of represent shifts that happened in other industries or ecosystems. So construction, well, it's construction sites, okay, and construction tech is actually developing technologies and tools for the construction sites. So what happened with the construction sites was extremely interesting because they are labor intensive, very, very broad, production floors. And it's very, very hands-on. So, product managers, the workers, they go into the site in the morning, they build the whole day, and then, at 4 or 5 in the afternoon, they close the site. In most sites, some can work 24 hours, but most sites, they close and they get back the next day. But then what happened was that that the managers were in lockdown. The actual, in order to prevent this construction industry from pausing completely, a lot of workers actually moved into the construction sites and lived there. So
okay.
yeah, so that was an interesting shift because now,
Why did they need to live there?
because if they, well, especially in Israel, a lot of the construction workers come from the Palestinian Authority, and if they had to cross the border, they would have to go to quarantine. So in order to prevent that, they actually remained in the sites. Okay. Now, another interesting thing that happened, that projects got accelerated extremely, very fast. So, for example, entire wards of hospitals were built, over 2 weeks for, to prepare the hospitals for more patients. And that's a very, very complicated logistic effort. Now, you do that with half your managers away from the site, which is a completely new experience, and with the workers constantly in the site. And then
so how do you do that?
so digital transformation occurred overnight in the construction industry. So if you spend years trying to convince project teams to use more digital tools and collaborate online, they said no, we're inside, we're here, we do the work, we're face-to-face people, and then they can't go to the site, so they have no site, and they need to manage the project. So things happened really quickly, and people responded very, very quickly to that. So I hear a lot of management teams who kind of they didn't have a choice, but then they started appreciating it, and once they start appreciating it, the appetite increases, and now they're extremely open to the benefits of digital transformation in an industry that was the last to adopt digital tools.
Yes.
So this is extremely interesting, and also there's a lot of funny things, that happen with how reality is kind of getting so weird, because hand sanitizers, right? So everybody were carrying hand sanitizers, but you can't use this stuff in a construction site. It's extremely flammable. So you don't want that. So how do you respond to that? So just all these challenges that are just like surfacing really, really quickly.
You became a consultant for construction, not just construction tech. Wow. So with this insight, I actually would love to transfer towards our third topic. And here I want to remind our audience to pop in some questions because we're getting close. So from, economic, cultural perspective, how did you see the trends, the impact on our society? Alex, would you like to start?
Well, I first want to say that what you described is probably one of the things that are the most difficult for us. It's changing paradigm, right? I mean, it's taken an industry that was never in the front line of change, and then suddenly, because it's forced to, then suddenly change happens, and happens to the best, I guess, now that we're after this. But taking a few steps back, you wouldn't expect the construction industry to be like the forerunners of this, and it's fascinating. I think it's amazing. We've seen very much similar things with co-working and just offices in general, whereas most people just couldn't come to the offices, right? The offices were laying empty. The real estate is there, you cannot move it, but a lot of people, a lot of countries were on lockdown, so you couldn't use it. So we had to really think outside of the box of what to do with this. And a great example would be right here in Tel Aviv. We've took one of our offices that was empty, and we've converted this into one of the Ichilov, which is one of the biggest hospitals here in Tel Aviv into their eye clinic. So we used our empty office to do eye clinic for the elderly. They can do checks for their eyes, so they don't need to come and be in contact with, or being in risk, being in contact with someone that is corona positive. So we've separated them, and we gave them our offices, and that was just amazing to see how they quickly adapted and took this opportunity and just moved all their operations to our offices. And then once everything will calm down, then they got back. But then taking it even to the next level, now we need to rethink, well, what do we want to do now that people are willing to come back to the office, right? I mean, safety now is the most important thing. I mean, for people to come back to the office, we need to provide them a safe environment, right? And for safe environment, that means not congested. If we're talking about, let's say, a conference room, then a conference room that used to be for 6 people, now we'll leave it up to 3, right? Because we have to give them the social distancing. We have to give them this professional distancing, if you'd like. For example, our offices always had communal areas where people mingled together and spoke and ate lunch and just discussed and sat on the couches. It's not that anymore. It's now an area where it's just like one-way street. You can only move in it. You can take your coffee and move away. You cannot sit in the common area and eat lunch together because that is not social distancing. So we had to rethink everything in order to allow people the safe way to come back. And we see now that people are responding to this in a very positive way. Right. We still have a lot of countries where it's still in lockdown, but for countries that we are getting there and it's getting close, and like Israel, that we can come back to office, but we are not enforced to do this, we can see the change. Less people are coming and it's less congested. And in a certain way, it's kind of nice because you don't have all this, you know, lots of people running around and noise and stuff. So. Yes. Changing this environment again was difficult, but change is the only constant with us. So I'm happy that it happened. And again,
I like it. I like it.
For the best, yeah. Not happy that
no, I like what you said. That change is the only constant thing that stays with us, and yeah, I'll take it with me. Erez, from your perspective, what were or are the economic, cultural trends that you've seen?
First, you know, from what Alex said, I gave my employees the options to choose if they want to come to the office or not. There's still, you know, there's a few issues. For example, if I have employees that live in north of Israel, for example, in Haifa, and they need to come in a train. Until now, there is no train. So, you know, I don't want to force them to come, you know, with their private car or with buses, even if, you know, even if the office is in Tel Aviv and we have an employee in Tel Aviv and she doesn't want to come with public transportation, you know, I won't force them at this stage. You know, I want them to feel safe, and if they work as usual and I see that the productivity is okay for now, then you know, it's better not to rush people to come and just be in the office, and that they will feel nervous. And I see that they choose to come to the office. At least some of them choose to come every day. Some of them choose to come once, you know, 1 day a week. Some of them come more. But it's really, you know, depending on the employees. And I think they feel comfortable, and I think that's the most important thing. But again, then you ask yourself the question, what about the teamwork? You know, how and I hear it from a lot of my friends that are in the high-tech sector, that many of the high-tech sectors told their employees, okay, it's no problem, probably until December, you will stay at home and the offices are empty. But then now they started to think, okay, it's not so easy. It's not so
I
easy.
know. I feel you. I'm in the high-tech industry and I feel you. We call it the beginning, the honeymoon phase, you know, where it's nice to really work from home every day, but then it's kind of like it's the end of it. So thank you, Erez. Yorai, I know I'm curious to hear your observation about economic cultural trends. And I know that we are also having some upcoming interesting questions in the chat. So curious that we'll start answering them all.
So I want to continue something that Alex mentioned about the speed of adapting to a new reality. And I think it's extremely interesting to see, because if you look at it from a broader perspective, over the last 2 decades, we had 3 major crises. So we had the dot-com in 2001, then almost a decade later, we had 2008, and now we have, this COVID-19, which is this, and then each crisis is more science fiction than the one before. And they're getting very, very close to each other. So you mentioned high tech, and I think high tech is a really good example, because what happened after the dot-com burst, and also through the 2008 crisis, was that all the ideas of lean and agile really kicked in. So it's all about preparedness. I think that the high tech industry can still allow itself to stay closed but still open. So I know the multinational companies, they're not going back to the offices till November. They're talking about spending the rest of the year at home, and everyone's fine with that, because they're still, and like Erez said, they're still maintaining high levels of productivity. So this is extremely interesting. So I think that the issue of preparedness has really became apparent over COVID-19, because the change was so quick and because the implications were so drastic. And I think that a lot of, so now comes the questions. Is this a disaster or an opportunity? How would businesses respond to that? Everyone wants to open the business and get back to normal, but then how long will normal last? So, we're probably going to have more of these weird things happening in the future. So what sort of preparedness are we trying to invest in now? And if you look at, I think everyone sees that. I mean, for example, I mentioned earlier social responsibilities. Okay, people are becoming more aware of the power of social responsibility. How we behave affects a lot of other people. I think people are very sensitive, to how particular or let's say different members of communities affect the larger community. And it's becoming an issue, and people kind of ask, so how are we going to fix the systems now?
Right. It seems like an opportunity for many things to fix, right?
I think because if we were kind of saying, in the past years that, yeah, everyone's a little bit latent there, nobody's really interested, and, we need to fix the world, but no one's really into fixing the world. I think now everyone really understands that we really need to fix the world, because, the world's going to kick us out if we're not going to do that.
Right. Yes. It's strong. So much.
If you think about it, this is a huge opportunity for business growth.
Yep.
Just getting back to normal, just fixing the systems again, catching up with the pace of change. That's a huge business.
Thank you. Thank you, Rai. So I see a lot of questions popping. Janet, please
Yes.
give us some.
This has been fascinating, and I thank everyone for their questions. Because so many of our participants are calling from the US, we have some basic questions about what was the percentage of unemployment that that happened? How did the government communicate with people? How quickly was testing made available, and what is that protocol at the moment? Would any of you like to just answer some things that maybe just things you've noted in the news but that we may not have seen over here in the US?
I can address it. So the the employment jumped to 25%, but as you know, also from the United States and from other countries in the world, the numbers are not real numbers because many of the employees were sent to what we call, vacation with, with no payment. But surely, much of this percentage will then went back to work during even May, for sure, and now also in June. So the numbers are still not clear where what will be the unemployment. For sure, the unemployment will not be the same after COVID-19, and many companies, and we already saw it in the big companies, the big corporates, that they return most of their employees back, but at the same time, they decided to fire, I would say, between 5 to 10% of their employees. It happens because of two reasons, and again, what I'm talking, it's not only special to Israel, it's all over the world. One, they saw that they can be efficient, more efficient with less employees. And second is it was a good timing to fire people without putting in the media that, this and that companies fired so many people, and what people say and what the employee says, and, et cetera, et cetera. So it was, it was a good timing for everyone to do it. So, and again, from the point of view of the employer, it's not good. If we looking at from the point of view of the corporates, this crisis forced them to be much more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And in terms of the communications, Eliya, how did the Israeli government communicate? How did your company, I mean, you work for EY, which is a global company. Was it local? Was it global? How did communication happen?
So specifically, I would refer to Ernst & Young. We had, so already before the pandemic actually started in Israel and the quarantine began, we were instructed to make sure that our remote equipment, like that remotely we can connect, that our equipment is working. So every day almost, or every other day, there was communication. And I think personally, the head of our cyber department made sure to contact each one of our employees to communicate. And in addition to that, there was global communication from EY America. So I think that's a key thing, as Erez mentioned, ensuring that there is direct communication to help everyone feel comfortable and safe. And from the government perspective, I'm not such a big follower, but I would say that I think there was every weekend, fellows, please help me out because I don't watch a lot of television, but every weekend and maybe every other day when there was a peak of the quarantine, people were kind of like stuck listening to the television, hearing, the prime minister, what he has to say. So I think that's the government tried to keep communication, direct communication, to the citizens. What would be your perspective?
I actually have another question for Alex. Alex, for when you are now going to the office, are people wearing masks? What is the current government position on masks, and are people following it?
It's a great question. I think, well, it's not, I think, masks are a must at public places. It is a must because we see this everywhere, and we see the signs, and we are being told, again, like Israelis, we don't always follow the rules, so not everybody does it. But we, in our offices at least, we try to. We have posted it everywhere. We have checks of temperature before you enter the building. We do force people to wear masks in the communal areas where they interact with each other. Obviously, if you're closing your office, that's up to you. If you receive people or have meetings, but any place that you have interactions with people, obviously that would be highly recommended. But again, Israelis as Israelis, we don't always obey by the rules, for better and worse.
Thank you. The next question is for Yorai. As you are on the bleeding edge of innovation in so many ways, have you seen any new types of jobs, or can you predict any sort of new types of businesses that may come out of this global pandemic?
Okay, this is a great question. So yeah, I saw a lot of very quick entrepreneurs rushing into the online conferencing space. So when everyone was in lockdown, and they still needed, to continue the large events, a lot of people a lot of organizations got stuck there, so they couldn't put everyone on Zoom. They needed to orchestrate. So it was a new type of producers who emerged, and stuff like, we are online conference producers now. So that was interesting. I think that in the startup ecosystems, something interesting that happened was that because a lot of investments got on hold and got delayed, a lot of startups started helping each other. So, and that was amazing, because instead of having like a competitive space, you now have like a network of talents who are initially starting to think how they're going to build products and services together, not on their own, because they realize now that it's even more challenging. So that was a very interesting thing and I think that it will open a new niche for collaboration experts, or let's say more creative integration experts, how to do that. So that's interesting. I saw a lot of people, I don't know if it's directly related to the questions, but I think a lot of people kind of stepped up and took responsibilities over broken things. So, I mean, one of the examples that when schools opened again and the entire education system was completely confused in how to operate. So you have kids, but you need to separate them to different classes, and they need to come into school with their masks. And there's everything is organized inside the school, but outside the school, it's like a pack of people, and everyone's on top of each other. So there's no social distancing there. And then some parents kind of said, well, you know, we're doing this. We're helping kids get off the parents' cars, so why not organize the kids, you know, in a queue to school? And it kind of moved forward. It's easy to, you know, attack a system that is confused and trying to recuperate and get back to business. So that will be the easy thing, but I think that the brave thing will be, so like, okay, where can we step up? Where can we get in and kind of invent a role? So now there's a new role in the education system, which is an organizing parent for kids and school entrances. Mm-hmm. Another thing that was really interesting was that because everything was on hold, all the delivery infrastructure became a critical infrastructure. So it's really hard to find people who would do deliveries now. It's a very high demand job, which is interesting because what are the implications of that? Like, do we need some new code of conduct for? A friend told me yesterday that he was almost hit by a delivery guy rushing, you know, to do their job. So it's a moral question. It's like, are you allowed to go really, really quick in order to serve someone and then, you know, not watch out for people who are, you know, going about their business? So maybe that will be a new area.
Thank you so much. Erez, are you willing to make a prediction on the financial markets over the course of this summer?
The $1 million question.
Yeah, well, you know, we're Baruch. We deal with $1 million questions.
It's a very tough question, and the answer is that for sure there are opportunities. So, you know, just watch out from, you know, the broad market, because it can be very, you know, not telling the real story here. Because if people really looking for what, you know, for example, take the NASDAQ, okay, the NASDAQ index is already positive from the beginning of the year. But if you will zoom in, you will see that there are 3-5 companies over there, which is, again, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, and take Alphabet, which Google, and maybe Facebook, that just, you know, they are already 30% of this index. So it's quite, you know, not telling the real story, because there are still many of the sectors. Take for example, the transportation, you know, all the airlines, the entertainment, the hotels, many of the sectors that are still down tens of percentage from the beginning of the year. So I'm just saying, don't go on, you know, just something that went down, but look at the numbers, and for sure there are opportunities. And if someone thought that the stock market was interesting, you know, at the beginning of the year, when everything was at the top, for sure he will find things now that are much more interesting than at the beginning of the year.
Thank you so much. I see that we're now at 2 o'clock, so I'm just going to ask for one sentence from each of the four of you. If there's something that the U.S. can learn from Israel and how you face the pandemic, what one bit of advice would you give to those of us in the U.S. about the Israeli approach to the pandemic? So Eliya, why don't we start with you?
Oh, I need to think about it. I think
You surprise us with this question.
no, it's good. It's good. It's a good way to sharp our thoughts. So I think the first thing that I take, actually, it's so hard for me to say from the Israeli perspective, but I would say the way I view it is just to connect, to maintain connection, personal connections to the people you love. And it's even much stronger. You can see it even much stronger here, because despite the restriction to wear masks, we all want to hug each other. It's hard, and maybe in different culture, they would be more strict about, maintaining social distance. And in Israel, it's impossible. So I hope
beautiful response.
Yeah, so I think that's what I take from here.
Okay. Alex, what one bit of advice would you give?
So I think because we went from really 0 to 100 in really a matter of, I don't know, nothing, a few days, it really got into people that it's really important for them to follow the new rules. And because not everybody, but most of the people did follow the rules, stayed at home, made sure they're safe, didn't go out, that prevented the much larger spread of the disease. Once it was contained, it's a different story now, but when it just happened and we were just in it, most people did obey to these rules and listen to the police, and hopefully because of that, we were able to get a lot of people out of the way, out of the harm's way, and people stayed safe. So I think that's very important for the US to follow.
Thank you. Erez?
Really don't know, how to answer this question. I think, again, I'm looking at myself. So I think just, don't be panic from this virus, but at the same time, be cautious, think, what you can do in the small things of the daily things that you, from, when you start the day until you finish the day. But, don't think it's the end of the world and now everything now you need to change your life. And so I think, again, life will continue.
Thank you. And your final comments.
So I think that in a way, this kind of global crisis brought everyone closer back to their communities, and the experience is much more local. And I think that especially in startups, we always preach, if you want to go global, you have to start, nearby. You have to create value and you have to create impact on your immediate surrounding and grow from there. And I think that what happened was that we kind of got used to trying to create impact on a global scale and forgetting the local scale. And I think this might be a really good reminder, or also an experience that it is actually extremely important, to start from the local scale, look for the opportunities there, make an impact, in the nearest surrounding, and then grow back, because everything kind of crumbled over the past few months, and we need to start growing back. And this is the way to grow back, just starting from what's near us.
That's a wonderful way to close our conversation. We do think both local and global at Baruch College. Alex and Eliya have been stewarding our local alumni chapter in Tel Aviv. And we look forward to ongoing programming taking place there. In turn, I feel like you're in the next room, even though you're across the world, which is remarkable. And so the intimacy of this conversation is terrific. And I thank our alumni from all over the world for joining us for this conversation. As Greg noted in the group chat, this conversation has been recorded and will be distributed to all attendees, as well as those who registered but were unable to join us. And I just give a big applause to all of our panelists, Yorai, Erez, Alex, and of course, Eliya. You've done a beautiful job, and thank you for sharing your view from your window on the impact of COVID-19. Please stay safe, stay well, and stay in touch. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.